Just instead is 1 hour, okay?
Yes, yes. Okay. Hi everyone. Assalamu alaikum everyone. This is your host Dr. Heather Shah. Welcome to the Kalwas channel and thank you very much for joining us. So today we have very dynamic personality and a well-known researcher and the professor who will share her experiences and her knowledge, the skills, particularly the research skills that how to conduct the literature review properly and so many things. So before I introduce the guest speaker in proper way, I will just let the I will say that thank you Kalwas for providing such opportunity to all of the people that this platform has become the symbol of hope for the people that they get the chance to interact with these experts, professionals, the professors, so that they could learn a lot from these and they can contribute to the better way in the society. So that would be a wonderful opportunity again provided by the Kalwas team. So I would like to thank the Kalwas team for arranging such a wonderful session. And now I would like to introduce the our guest speaker officially. Uh, Today we have very interesting personality. She is an associate professor at Azman Hashim International Business School, UTM, Kuala Lumpur. She has authored and co-authored several books which are published by reputed journals like Emerald, IGI Global, and Pearson. She is the author of widely recognized book Crafting Literature Review, a guide for doctoral students. She is also a prolific case writer. As the contribution to the research and publication, she has received several awards such as the Excellent Service Awards, Faculty Award for Research, Highly Commended Award, and so on. She teaches research skills related courses at doctoral level and conducts workshops on various topics related to literature review to build students' ability in writing effectively. She is a graduated 19 doctoral students, among which of six of them students got the GOT. She has been serving as the editorial board member in several reputed journals. Her current research interest includes green and sustainability marketing. So, welcome to the Kalwas platform, Dr. Farzana Kokab, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Haider.
Yeah,
You want me
thank
to
you.
share my slides?
Yeah, yes, please. You can share your slide. Let me just tell the viewer in that time that today we will be having this session in the format that Dr. Farzana Kokab will be presenting the slides for 30 to 40 minutes, and then it will be followed by the question answer session. If you have any questions which has not been covered in this presentation, you can ask us. You can email us. You can write in the comment section. You can use any forum. You can email us on info@corvas.com as well if you have any question regarding that. So I will be asking all these questions from the Dr. Farzana Koka, and we have also received so many questions in advance for the Dr. Farzana Koka, which way she will be answering us. And today I'm very excited to learn something very new from the Dr. Farzana Koka because learning is a journey, it's not the destination. There is always room for improvement. There is always new things which you can learn from the different experts at the different time. So that's the beauty of the webinars or the workshops wherever we attend, that we learn something new because as a viewer we see it for the first time, but the expert, they used to tell us the different things which are very good because these are the different tips and tricks we need and we require to learn it in a better way. And that's what I used to say in my different classes, that even to the PhD students, that a wise man is a man who takes advantage of somebody else's experiences, that you take advantage of somebody else's experience and learn from their experiences, and you do not experience by yourself, and you learn quickly. So that would be a wonderful thing. Yes, Dr. Farzana, you can share your slide, please.
Okay. Please let me know if it is visible.
Yes, it is visible. Carry on, please.
Okay. So, so first of all, Assalamu alaikum and very good afternoon. to all, and I thank you very much to Dr. Haider Shah for having me here in this webinar today. And
Pleasure.
as Dr. Haider said that, this is actually opportunity for all of us because, learning is endless. So very well said, Dr. Haider, that learning is actually endless. We learn till we die. So the moment we will feel that we learn enough, then actually that is the moment when it is our actually death for a researcher. And
True.
it is also well said that actually we learn from different people, different aspects. There is no such thing that this is the only way. So there are many ways. So yes, of course, it is always good to learn from different people's experiences and their understanding levels. So now today I'm going to talk a little bit about crafting literature review and few things that all of us we need to know. More particularly, I will say that my focus will be for the novice researchers because being an active researcher in this world, actually I think that when I started my journey, it was quite difficult. It was not so easy, and for novice researchers we need lot of actually guidance, and sometimes some simple thing we do not know. So I will say that my discussion today will be more focused to actually for the novice researchers who started their research journey, whether it is writing paper, whether it is your doctorate study, whatever. So I may not be able to cover every single thing of literature review, but I believe that it will give you some understanding about what to do, how to do, and how to kick start. And when we actually move on to writing, whether it is paper or your research or whatever it is, the main thing is that we have to learn by writing and reading. This kind of webinars gives us some tips, suggestions, but always we learn better only once we start actually doing things practically. So
True.
as Dr. Haider already introduced me, so I'm not going to say more about me. So here are some links that I can just tell you that if anyone is interested to know about my publication and research, you can click some of these, the academic platforms that we use as academicians. Well, so actually, literature review is quite overwhelming, even not only for the novice researchers, but also for researchers who is reviewing for a couple of years even, because this is actually very subjective in nature. This is not like something, like methodology that very structured. It's not like analysis that is very structured. It's very subjective in nature. And another thing is that the structure we follow for writing literature review, there is no specific structure per se, I would say. Yeah, of course, there are some common pattern we can see, but there is no specific structure. And it's not like, very much like the tools we use, software, species, MOs. It's not like that even. A lot of information available all the time in the source, and then that also make us feel like, overwhelmed. And lastly, there are a lot of different expectations from your supervisor, from your examiners, then also from the reviewers. So all those things makes these things actually a little bit overwhelming. And I also was overwhelmed when I started my doctorate journey, and I realized that, we need actually guidance, some tips, some suggestions. And maybe 10 years back, there was not so many webinars, there are not so many platforms to learn from other people's experiences, unless you just read yourself and write yourself and do a lot of mistakes and learn from your mistake. But however, I believe that this kind of webinar that give us the opportunity to share each other's experiences so that we can learn from each other, and it can be the survival guide for another person. So my this book is actually one of this kind of survival guide that I written, co-authored with Dr. Jihad Muhammad. So this book also we discuss a lot of things that we gone through the experiences in as a student when we did our doctorate journey. And not only that, when now we are supervising, we are writing papers, we are reviewing papers, and so on and so forth. Well, so we're here to share some of our, understanding experiences with all of you. I hope that it can give you some basic understanding, if not the advanced level. Well, so there are plenty of definition you'll find in the literature. These two are my
Excuse me,
very much
Dr.
close to my.
Farzana.
Sorry.
I believe the slides are stuck. Are you moving the slides?
Yes, which one you can see right now?
The first slide, the flyer of the, because I believe that you have to move it manually. Only then it will move.
If I have to do manually, then I have to actually remove this, the slides shows. Is it okay
Yes,
then?
yes, yes, please.
Is it?
Yeah, because now it's moving. Yes, now it's fine.
Okay, so
Yeah,
actually then I have to do it manually, so I cannot use the full screen mode. Okay, so just
yeah,
for
yeah, yes,
information.
that's fine. That's fine. Go ahead.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you. So yeah, this is the things I was just sharing with all of you that that yeah, it is overwhelming because it's subjective nature, but we also have some common pattern, and that's I'm going to share with all of you. And this is actually shared that also already that I'm going to share with you my own experiences, my own understanding. So it may vary with other people's as well, but no problem because we always respect each school of thoughts. So,
True.
okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about definition, but it's not like, I'm going to read what I written here. These two definitions actually taken from well-established researchers Hart and Cooper. And these two definitions actually, I found that they encapsulate the main essence, main idea, main understanding of what is literature review all about. So if we take the main keywords from these two definitions, then this is actually important to have selection of sources. We need to have our own expression of certain views, like take a stand, logical explanation. We need to know how to integrate the information that is available in the existing literature. So we need to summarize and synthesize. We also need to know how to critically analyze what is being discussed already. So you need to know how to be critical in reading and writing. We also need to know how to bridge the gap and identify the research gaps. So it is still a huge thing. I'm going to cover a little bit. I'm going to touch on it every single thing that I here highlighted, but in brief. Okay. So when you're talking about summarizing and synthesizing, these two are very important, things in literature, reviewing literature. So when you summarize articles or the existing, information available, what we do basically, sometimes some mistakes we see as examiners that, or reviewer, that the writers, they are actually just merely citing other people's work. They are just reporting or reiterating what is already being said, instead of trying to understand how smartly we can summarize. If you want to summarize each article, then it's going to be an epic. It's not going to be a literature review. So since we have a limited space, whether it is your research paper, whether it is your articles, so since we have a limited space, number of words, so you have to be smart enough to summarizing the existing body of knowledge. Synthesis is a higher level work. This is actually integrating what we already read, what we summarize, what we know, and it has lot of other function, like if you want to highlight a research gap, if you want to see the overall understanding of the phenomenon, if you want to try to bridge each the loopholes. So this actually synthesis level. So synthesis doesn't come overnight. Once you summarize, once you are skilled in summarizing, once you read lot, and then we can synthesize. Okay, so synthesis is actually bigger pictures. It gives us a bigger pictures, give bigger understanding, and it is more higher level of work for the writers. Well, I give you an example here. So this is actually taken from a study paper cutting. So it is talking about latest issues about the COVID cases in Malaysian situation. So it is written, started like this: data showed that vaccinations has succeeded in sharply reducing the number of serious COVID-19 cases in the country. Blah blah blah. So this is is not a literature review, definitely. It can be a source of your literature and the selection, but it is actually not a literature per se. This is actually just merely telling what is happened. So it is not a literature review. On the other hand, if we read this one, this is actually a literature review. So what is making it different than the previous one? Previous one was like reporting facts. This one is has citation. It has integrated what other people have said, and the authors critically reviewed the information. Those are available. So this is actually literature review. Well, so now when we're talking about literature review, there are many kinds of literature review, even what I'm mentioning here more than that, but these three actually quite commonly used literature review style. One is narrative review, second is systematic literature review, third is meta-analysis. There can be many more, but these three are quite, famous and widely used. So, what are the main essence of these three types? Narrative review, anyone can do it. It is actually broad aspect we cover. We take a topics, and of course we try to systematically analyze and synthesize the past study findings. Systematic literature review, it is actually more specific way we follow. It is more systematic, but doesn't mean that it is better or lesser. It is actually one way of doing it. What is the different? Systematic literature review, we have a particular research questions, and that research questions we gather the articles, informations. That is, we set some rule of thumb, like selection criteria, exclusion criteria, inclusion criteria, and based on that we select the articles, and then we go through the cleaning process, like we should have more than one person to see whether the quality of the information is good or not, and things like that. It is more systematic in nature. Meta-analysis, we use basically a little bit of analysis to see the findings from other studies on particular topic, basically to see the effect size. So, well, I'm going to talk about basically this webinar narrative review. And narrative review, actually, no matter what kind of review you are doing, you need to know about narrative review first, actually, okay, because this is the basic, gives us basic understanding about literature review. Well, so when you're talking about literature review, there are many aspects actually to consider. But if I say that for the new researchers who just started their journey, so these are the basic 5 things that you should consider when you're reviewing or attempting to review your literature. So first of all, selection of documents, very important. Then how you are actually mapping your ideas, because when we read, then we actually sometimes lost in lot of information. Third thing is you need to know how to be critical in reading and writing. And also it is important to identify the research gap. And another thing, not to overlook, that is your academic writing style. That's very important as well. But sometimes we see that, maybe content wise is good, but maybe the writing didn't follow the academic writing approach. So, well, let's start with the selection of sources, or searching your literature. I'm not going to cover everything, but I'm going to give you some handy tips. Those are anyone can use in any point of time, whether you have sophisticated technology or not. So when you want to search for articles, so there are two, I will say that there are many, of course, but again, these two are very basic. First of all, use of keyword search. So if you want to search articles and you do not know how to find relevant articles, you can use the keyword search. So how you can use keyword? First, you can use the direct keywords, or you can use the synonymous keywords. Like if you want to search for articles related to loyalty, you can also use the synonymous words like retention. Use with and without context. So let's, for example, you want to study mobile service users customer loyalty, then you can use mobile service and customer loyalty together. So the context is your mobile service users, and you can also just simply say customer loyalty without mentioning mobile service users. So you will find different kind of varieties of sources, just changing of your keywords. Okay. Second is, uh, you take a good articles published in a good journal, scholarly journal articles. What is scholarly? Has to be peer reviewed and has to be indexed in reputed platform, and I mean by reputed indexing bodies like Scopus, ISI, this kind of thing, and shouldn't be predatory, shouldn't be hijacked journals. So then you can see that articles reference list. And once you see the reference list, so the good thing, the beauty about it is that when you read a good article that is published in a good journal, that articles also possibly will cite all good sources, published in good sources. So therefore you can read a good journal articles, and then you can look at the reference list and you can see what are the references cited there, and you can see which one is actually more relevant to your work you are doing, and you pick up from there. So there are some examples like customer loyalty, customer retention, customer switching. These are the keywords you can use. Is also synonymous words. And then once you use that, you can find plenty of information on the Google Scholar. Well, there are a lot of debates about using Google Scholar, but I think no harm for the novice researchers to get the information first. Why people say Google Scholar is not advisable? Some people, they say maybe basically the article it is published, uploaded in Google Scholar, sometimes those are not the real original published articles, so there can be mismatch and differences in terms of information. So the issue is, for me, is like this, that you can take the information from here and you can search the proper published journal articles if it is not available here, using your own university website and the platform, and you can download from there the original published articles. Okay, but no harm to get the information from here actually. Another thing I told you, that you can see one published journal articles reference list, and that can be your key reference list, and you can figure it out from the reference list what other journals are and then you can pick it up what you think is that important for your topic, and you can again read those downloaded 2 or 3 articles and see their reference list, and in this way you can gain lot of actually relevant sources. Well, so we have many kind of sources, but these two I think we need to know when we want to give a kickstart. So we say primary source and secondary source. So these sources I taken from Saunders et al. Saunders et al. Is also very close to my heart. It's a methodology book, but they discuss a lot of things about literature review and other things of methodology, of course. So I can suggest all of you to read Hart, Cooper, Saunders et al. Another one. Okay. So what is primary source? Primary sources, those kind of sources that is very difficult to locate, difficult to get it for, because maybe those are not published properly, like working papers, unpublished theses, company internal reports, for example. And secondary sources, what is easy to locate, it is properly published on the public domain, like books, journals, newspapers, and so on and so forth. Okay. Sometimes primary sources also being considered as gray literature. You can decide which one is more important for you, but most of the time, your reviewers, your examiners, your supervisors will like to see basically maybe, what is properly published. Well, so once you have sufficient information in your hand, the next step will be that how you can actually map them, how you can record them, how you can trace them, because sometimes it can happen that you read a lot about one particular topic, especially if the topic you're working on is matured or saturated area, like for example customer loyalty, customer satisfaction, customer service quality. These are actually very much saturated area. So since it is very much well examined phenomenon, you also need to show your reader that you did a good job in reviewing the articles. So it is actually, I think, overburdening. Never mind. So since you are reading a lot of literature, then you need to know how you can map your ideas. So I love what Hart said, that you can use relationship map. you can use conceptual mapping, you can use relevance tree, you can use taxonomy tables, and so on and so forth. So Heart has a dedicated chapter for discussing this kind of mapping ideas. So what I like to suggest to anyone who want to know how to map your ideas, that summary record sheet. Some say, summary tables, some will say that, literature mapping table, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It is actually using a table form to map your ideas or map your or trace your readings. So this is taken from Heart. Actually, this is a relationship map. So once you read lot, only then you will be able to come up with this kind of your own mind mapping kind of thing. um, this is another example, that concept mapping, also taken from Heart. So sometimes some students, I feel that they find it very difficult. Some they like it. It's up to you. But what is very easy to follow for anyone, that is summary record sheet or summary table. So this is the common template I suggest my students and the others students or other researchers who have started their journey. That you can just, when you're reading an article, of course you can use EndNote, of course you can use NVivo to have your computer organize those, but no problem, this is not mutual exclusive. You can do both actually. That system, that software will help you to organize in regard to, you have plenty of info databases in your laptop, and then it will help you to organize. You can just use, maybe write one variable name, and it can give you the information about that this article, they're talking about it, and within very few seconds. This one is different, the purpose is different. Here we map our ideas. We do not trying to say that it will help you to organize your all information in your laptop, but it will help you to understand, at a glance, a trend pattern or very important information, particular information about one particular topic. So you can do this table for, if you have few variables, let's say you have working on 3 different variables, you can do these tables for 3 different variables, and you can come up with this kind of uh, columns and the cells. So I show you how it looks like once you do it. So this is looks like this once you have done it. So you read properly and you fill up those cells, and then once you want to see, let's say, pattern or trend or understanding at a glance, let's say you have these 3 things at the moment in our hand, you have more. So if I say you that, okay, what kind of countries they examine this topic more, so you can say maybe developed country, because we can see US more. What kind of methodology they use, mostly quantitative, for example. Then we can also see the findings, that what kind of findings they found, what kind of variables they examined in relation to with this particular topic. So these are the things that once you do it properly, then you can just refer to this table and you can just quickly have a understanding, that okay, what are the main idea, what are the main essence of this particular phenomenon. So my all students, they do it, and as a beginner, I think it helps them. Okay. Well, it's not only for your own mapping. Sometimes you will see that when you are reading journal articles, they also highlight certain tables, but maybe that table is different than this table. That table, your own tables. But from there, you can just take out certain parts and you can place it in your write-up, whatever you need. For example, these articles, they're focusing on dimensionality. So they're given the table for dimensionality. Okay, so you will find a lot of articles, they are showing definitions tables, dimension tables, and so on and so forth. So you can actually, here in Malaysia also, some examiners, they love to see the tables because they feel that it shows that the students put some hard work. But again, it depends on you and your supervisor's understanding and common agreement. And also you cannot just place a huge tables in your text, then you have to know which one to place, which one not to. But journal articles, you cannot definitely show that big summary table, but you can actually show certain aspect of that table that you feel that you need to highlight, or the strength of your paper. Well, next we moved on to talking about critical reading, critical writing. So first I want to explain that what does it mean by critical. When we hear this word critical, so first thing comes that negativity. It's not like that. We are not criticizing to find the mistakes. Actually, this is the things for researchers. We need to adopt this understanding that, okay, we question the information and we judge the value of it. Okay, we just judge the value of it, whether it is worthy, whether it is reliable, whether it is rational. So this kind of thing. So of course doesn't mean that we're trying to find the mistakes or the fault purposely. It is just that questioning the value, questioning the reliability, questioning the rationales and things like that. So if I summarize, basically we are looking for strength and weakness of this text, whether this piece of information adding any value to the knowledge, and whether it is reliable. So let's look at one example here. See, if we read this example, I'm not going to read it actually, but if you, let's say first sentence, we just see that, okay, according to Lin et al., green cosmetics is defined as being a multifaceted construct for the preservation of the environment, blah, blah, blah. Then they explain a little bit about this, and then towards the end they're saying that there are several underlying differences between the two. However, organic is well known to have a stricter definition than green of nature, blah blah blah. So it's very simple understanding from this, that what is the strength. It is talking about latest topic. That topic may be interesting. They also differentiated between green and organic cosmetics. That is the strength. Weakness, writing a style and the writing approach. When they're writing, is doesn't look like that much academic. For example, when they started with the quote, inverted quote, they didn't end it with another inverted quote. So you do not know where this inverted quote actually stops, how many words they have taken from word for word. Secondly, they said that it is green cosmetics is a construct, but it's not a construct, it's one kind of product actually. Okay. So in this way, you will be able to figure it out actually, the strength and weakness. Of course, it will differ from person to person, but of course, if you consciously put effort to understand from now and on what you're reading, what are the strength, what are the weakness. So towards the end, later on, you will figure it out actually, that what are the strength, what are the, and it will inculcate the creative, critical thought in your mind. We look at another example, okay, about whether it is valuable, this knowledge. So when we read a lot of article on a particular phenomenon, for example, again I bring the discussion about customer loyalty. So huge articles you will find in the past studies. Again, recent articles also talking about loyalty. So you have to understand that whether the recent article, the new one, whether it is adding any value to your understanding or not. So the adding the knowledge can be any kind of. It can be understanding on the dimensionality. It can be understanding on the looking at the definition, conceptualization, looking at, for example, the practical aspect, looking at and the methodological aspect, looking at the contextual aspect, anything, whether it is adding any value. If there is no value added to your knowledge in terms of your methodology, in terms of dimension, in terms of the definition, in terms of the context, in terms of the culture, whatever, even if it is not contributing even a single bit, then it is actually not adding to the value. For example, this article, they have value to the practitioners. They are contributing to the knowledge of the practitioners. For example, they written the findings suggest that practitioners should try to enhance the consumer's knowledge and involvement about green cosmetics, and so on and so forth. They started to explain it more. So is this writing adding any value to the knowledge? Yes, it is. In which aspect? Practical aspect. Okay. Now we see another one about reliable information. So you can see read these few sentences, and you will see that so nicely written actually, these sentences. They're given data. They explain properly. But what happened? The question is whether it is reliable. So how to understand whether it is reliable or not? Because when you're informing your readers, telling your readers some data, it should be backed by some references to tell the reader that it is not hearsay, it is not anecdotal evidences, it is coming from authentic sources. that this number, the dollar 13.5 billion, is not that I'm coming up from my own dream. It is actually, it has a ground, and who said so? You give the source. So that's how you can see that whether it is reliable, this particular information is reliable or not. Okay, so when you want to be critical in reading, um, at the starting, you can just try to follow this simple rule of thumb. You try to see the strength and the weakness. You try to see whether it is adding value to the knowledge, and try to see whether this information seems to be reliable, authentic or not. Okay. So I'm going to show you one example of critically written text. Actually, critical writing comes from critical reading. So when you want to be critical in reading and writing, it's also very much related to your understanding of the phenomenon and your reading of articles. So if you do not read properly, you will not be able to critically analyze and synthesize. You will be able to do it once you read, once you have certain level of understanding of the phenomenon. Okay. So for example, maybe we read together for a while. So it is saying that although the loyalty phenomenon has been studied since the last 8 decades, little emerged multi-brand loyalty. So Jacobi 1971 and Olson and Jacobi 1974 began to explore the notion of multi-brand loyalty during 1970s. Both of these studies were exploratory in nature and not meant to understand the specific antecedents of multi-brand loyalty. You see, this writing, they are actually explaining, synthesizing, simultaneously criticizing. The focus of the former research was to highlight the importance of studying multi-brand loyalty along with sole brand loyalty, whereas the latter study proposed the measures of multi-brand loyalty based on expectancy value model. Well, so on and so forth. Additionally, based on a longitudinal study of 66 families, Cunningham concluded that these families exhibit divided loyalties. Then they started to move on. Then, however, not many studies have examined this construct in a relatively recent study. So, in this way, what is this writing is doing? Synthesizing, giving the information to the readers, and critically analyzing those kind of information. Okay. So, the last critical discussion is that they are saying that uh, okay. Moreover, it is not clearly understood why consumers become multi-brand loyal within a particular service category. So this is the way you can also try to think, the whatever you're reading, you can just try to see, whether there is some strength, some weakness, whether it is reliable, and whether it is actually adding value to the knowledge, and then simultaneously you can be actually jot down your own understanding, and these things can help you to understand the things better. Now, next is I'm going to highlight about research gap. So again, research gap, if you want to have identification of research gap, you also need to read. If you don't read, if you read only 10 articles, 20 articles, and you say, hooray, I got an idea, this is the gap I want to fill. Actually, it doesn't work because you didn't read well. So what you think by reading 10 articles or 20 articles, maybe actually if you read 50 articles, you will find that it's already covered. So that's why you need to read properly. If you do not read properly, then you have the deficiency of knowledge even. So what is research gap? This is actually, in other words, deficiency in the literature. That means what you do not know. So when we read about particular phenomenon, we already have certain understanding that what the existing body of knowledge they tell us about it, what is examined thus far. In also, when you can review critically, you will understand that what is not covered in the literature so far. So that is the deficiency in the literature, and that is we call research gap in brief. Okay. So we read few sentences at the beginning. It's saying, despite the marketing has well established the pervasiveness of the influence of customer satisfaction, its dynamic influence in different consumption setting is still elusive. To fill this gap, this study aims to confirm the mediating role of the customer satisfaction in the context of tourist revisit intention of a destination. So the question as a reviewer, so what? What is the deficit in the literature pertaining to customer satisfaction? They didn't mention it. Does this statement justify the inclusion of customer satisfaction as a mediator? They also didn't explain it. Okay. So I'm showing you one good example that in my most of the discussion on my research gap, I like to highlight, because to me this is something really we can learn from a existing writing. So in this study, what they have done, first they are writing about the phenomenon that there is a growing recognition of customer satisfaction as a critical construct in marketing in general and consumer behavior in particular. As a result, substantial research interest has been generated in the area of consumer satisfaction, consumer expectations, consumer attitude, consumer intention, result seeking activities, complaining behavior, consumer perception, etc. These few sentences they nicely explain that actually in the literature what are the things they already investigated other researchers on the topic. And then they started to mention that, however, there is a dearth of research examining what happens to customers after they have switched with regard to satisfaction loyalty to the new firm. So this is, if you read carefully, you will figure it out that first few sentences they are saying what we know from the existing literature on the topic. Okay. Second part, that is, however, it is there highlighting what you do not know yet, what is the deficiency in the literature. And third part, after that, explaining why this gap has to be addressed, like an understanding of how these consumer groups differ in their attitude and behavior towards the firm, provide crucial insights for designing and implementing effective customer acquisition and retention strategies. So this is the way we should write actually. So most of the time we see that when I review the research papers or the proposals or thesis, then students, not all but many, have the tendency to jump to the conclusion nobody have done it. This is not the academic way, this is not the proper way to highlight your gap. So also you need to follow the steps, like explain what you know from the literature, then highlight the deficiency, and then explain why you need to address this gap. Okay, so these are the things quickly. And I have a more detailed discussion on identifying and presenting research gap in the research beast. You will find out there. It is, I think, 20 minutes discussion only on this topic with example. So if you want to know more about it, you can just go through that link and you can figure it out there. Okay. Now, the last thing, or towards the end, what I'm going to share is that academic writing style. What is academic writing? It is actually, it varies. It varies, even your university, and there are plenty of book available about academic writing. I myself have 5 books about academic writing, and 5 books discusses 5 different things. Some books they also talk about basically grammar, use of proper grammar, use of proper sentences. So for me, I want to highlight few basic things beyond of the grammar. You can send it for proofreading, you can send it for copy editing, but beyond of the grammar, what is important for a researcher is very important. Okay, to justify and do not declare. What we see when students or the writers they write, they most of the time they just declare what they're doing. Okay, you want to use, let's say for example, purposive sampling. You cannot just declare that this study used purposive sampling. Explain and justify why so. You don't need to write 3 paragraphs. Write few sentences. 1 sentence, 2 sentences, if needed 3 sentences, but you do justify. Justify based on logic and not by emotion. So sometimes when we justify, it's like, we do not take the rational approach. Like many cases it happens that students during their proposal defense, during their viva voce, then the examiner asking them that, okay, why you have considered, for example, why you considered or study or studying leadership in jewelry business. Then the students, this is a real life experience. One student in my research method class, he said that, because doctor, I want to study the leadership in jewelry business because my family business is jewelry business. This is emotional answer, this is not logical answer. Okay, it cannot be justified, it cannot be considered as rational justification. You should explain properly. Okay, if I say that, okay, why don't you study halal food in restaurant business, you cannot say because I'm a Muslim. Of course this is good, this is one of the things that you want to explore, but when you want to write, you have to say, explain properly that because there are, maybe for example, in Malaysia there are 3 races, and then you want to understand basically these halal issues, because restaurant business, they are offering this halal food, and this food is very much related to the religion and things like that. Okay, so it has to be backed by logical explanation as well. Third third thing is that make a conclusion of your discussion and just don't leave it like, like hanging sentence, we call it hanging sentence, hanging expression. So when you explain about certain thing in your writing, then we also expect that, you conclude with your own understanding. You explain it, that which side you are taking or why so. Another two thing about pure writing style, one is when you're moving from one paragraph to another paragraph, when you're moving from one sentence to another sentence, there should be a smooth transition. If there's no smooth transition, it's like very much difficult to understand the idea. And also you need to follow the proper referencing style. So sometimes students, they pay the least attention to the referencing style, formatting style, but those are very important. Those are like when you see a person without knowing the person, so the first impression comes by seeing that person maybe dress up, how that person is presenting him or herself. So it is also like that. The before we read your content, the first thing actually we judge you based on your formatting style, your referencing style. It shows us that how much committed you are, how much you are taking it seriously. So sometimes my students, my own students, they say that, doctor, please don't look at my formatting and just see my content. But my suggestion is that I will start seeing your formatting first. That shows me how committed you are. Even when you submit a journal articles in any papers, so in a journal, they can even reject your manuscript. This rejection by just saying that it is not properly formatted. They didn't follow referencing a style. So though it can be for you a stupid thing, but it's very important. Okay. So just look at some basic example now, what I just said. Lack of justification. It's like if you read this one, understanding consumers' behavior is the key to a profitable business. Unfortunately, consumer behavior is getting increasingly complex. In order to obtain a loyal pool of consumers, it is important to deal with their choices and desire for innovative products and services. With this aim, the present study attempts to investigate young consumers' innovativeness and their involvement in various buying stages. As a reviewer, my question is, so what? Why the authors want to investigate young consumers' innovativeness? They didn't mention at the beginning young consumer, they said consumers' behavior. Then suddenly they're concluding young consumers. For what reason? Why they want to study their involvement in various buying stages? Okay, you understand innovativeness, they explain. But why want to study the involvement in varying buying stages? Then the next question comes to the mind, how they operationalize young consumer, which age group and why so? Because there are multiple discussions. Some say young is 25 years and below. Some say it can be 35 and below. So which school of thought you belong to? Well, see another explanation for lack of your own voice. So this is something, as I said you, that you can explain literature, but we want to see your own stand as well. For example, this writing, we don't have much time to read sentence by sentence. So what I can say that they're talking about, get they be given a definition, then they're talking about dimensionality of OCB. What is OCB? Organizational citizenship behavior. In brief, we call OCB. So whoever working on OCB or OB, you know very well that OCB has different dimensionalities and different school of thought. One school of thought say it has 8 dimension, another say 5 dimension, another cluster to 2 dimension, even another literature. This is can be unidimension. So for OCB dimensionality, we have already 4 school of thoughts. So now these researchers, they explain the definition and they given the dimensionality based on the 5 dimension. So the question is here, why the author considered only 5 dimension, not the others? Did they explain? Did they justify? Why they are not telling us even at the conclusion that they are considering this 5 dimension for their own study? So this is the things, okay? So it is not enough to just write, or it is not enough to explain what other people have done. We also want to know how it makes sense for your study and what school of thought you belong to. And then also we want to know that how you see this information for your study. So there can be a lot more explanation and examples, like this is actually about lack of flow and smooth. So sometimes we write but idea doesn't flow together. So this is one example of that. Well, I'm going to conclude the discussion with some tips for all of you. So I think this is one common question and common dilemma for most of the new researchers who just started to, read and review. That is, when we review the literature, what to look for. Okay, so this can be very easy and fun for those who already have started and already published papers and quite long time you're working on it, but it can be very difficult for those who just started their journey. Okay, so first things you need to see actually credential of that source of information. That's the first thing you need to see when you want to review before that. So, what are the author's credential? Are they an expert in the field? Are they affiliated in a reputed organization? What is the date of publication? Is it sufficiently current or will knowledge have moved on? If it is a book, is it the latest edition? If it is a publisher, is it a scholarly publisher? If it is a journal, has the content been peer reviewed? So first we need to see credential. So there's one experience from my real life experience that one examiner came from one reputed research public university from university in Malaysian universities. Then the students was in the viva voce session, and then the professor, she was asking the student that, okay, I can see that the papers you cited, those are not coming from scholarly journal articles, many. So how can I accept whatever you are saying? This is actually, coming from authentic sources. So these are the things, we need to see first thing the credential of the source, then the content. So these few questions actually are taken from Emerald website. Anyone can access. It is open for all. I have the link here. So from there you can also see that Emerald, they say that when you want to review, so what you want to see is the writer addressing a scholarly audience, blah blah blah. But for me, I think I want to be more specific for all of you, to give you more specific tips. This is not from anyone else, this is from my own knowledge, understanding, experiences, being writer, reviewer, editor, supervisor, and so on and so forth. So when you're reading, look for these questions whether you can answer. First, who have studied this problem issue before? So you should know the key authors. Key authors meaning who actually write more, who given the understanding of the phenomenon properly. So you have to know those people's actually, who. Then what? So after who, you need to see what they have found, what the other researchers they have found, they examined, they investigated on this particular phenomenon or the topic. Then once you know it, then you try to understand that, okay, what else we do not know? Okay, we know this, we know that, but what else we need to know but we do not know? And then you also need to know what are the existing school of thoughts. So what is a school of thought? So sometimes it happens that some we call it academic tradition. So some people, some academicians, they look at this thing in particular way, so it become from their own school of thoughts. Another researchers, the stream of researchers, they look the same thing maybe from different angle. So that is different school of thought. Like just now I said, OCB have different school of thought. Some scholars perceived is 5 dimensions, some 8, some 2, some 1. So in this way, you need to know if there an existing school of thought, if there an existing debate going on that particular phenomenon. You also need to know that within this school of thought, which one actually you belong to. Okay. And why? Of course, with justification. You cannot just say because it's simple, because it is easy, or because I like it. So you should explain properly logically. Okay. For example, if I'm saying that, okay, customer loyalty can have several dimensionalities. So let's say the common debate is behavioral or it is attitudinal. So then I can say that, okay, if I say I want to go for behavioral side, I'll say I want to look customer loyalty from behavioral point of view, because all is matter is the money finally. So I will count that person as loyal who is paying more every day, every week, every month. Okay, every 3 months, for example, every 2 weeks. If I want to say that no, I want to take a stand that customer loyalty is perceived as attitudinal perspective, then my point of view will be maybe money will not be last long, But unless we look at their attitudinal commitment, that okay, they are showing intention to do it in future, so then I'm tapping the attitudinal side. Again, if I want to say that no, it is composite approach, like attitudinal and behavior together, then I can say that only one side cannot give us the true picture, so I want to combine both sides. So therefore, you should know how to justify that I cannot tell you, your supervisor cannot tell you should know yourself by logical understanding of the things and by reading it. Okay. Then, what method has been utilized? Is it qualitative? Is it quantitative? If it is qualitative, is it there are several qualitative approach. If it is quantitative, also it can be more than one approach. So you have to know what method they used. How this finding contribute to the body of knowledge. So these are the things when you're reading any articles from now and on, then you can start looking at these questions when you're reading about, to understand, what you want to know, what you want to figure it out from reading this particular uh, articles. For example, we see one example here. So in this article, these authors, they're talking about achievement motivation. So what is the main agenda? Achievement motivation. What they have found? They found achievement motivation is the effort of each individual to maintain his or her maximum abilities, blah, blah, blah. What is still not known? That you should come out after reading, but they didn't explain in this particular write-up. Maybe they explained later on, but not here. What are the existing school of thought? They didn't give us any understanding about those existing school of thought. So what do you stand among these different school of thought? So those also it is not explained here. Okay. So we see another example. So in this abstract, it is taken. So you can see that what is the main agenda. So they look for the research objective. What they have found, look for the research findings. What method they have utilized, look for the methodology section. How these findings contribute to the knowledge, look for the contribution sections, or the when they're explaining that, the uniqueness of this study or how they're contributing to the body of knowledge. What you do not know, so sometimes it comes with the research gap, and sometimes the authors, they do not deliberately explain. What are the existing school of thought? Not all study they purposely mention it. It actually, some good journal articles they mention it, highlight it, and again it is related when there are multiple school of thought. Sometimes there is no multiple views. Everybody look at it in the same way. Then of course there's nothing to talk about from different perspective. And then you also need to know that, whether this study explain their own stand, or views. So these are the things you can look for when you're actually looking for any reading any articles from now. I also want to give you some suggestions for some suggested readings. Of course, you can read any books. I mean, any things that you think that helping you to organize your understanding and the writing of literature review. But these are the books I found very, very important, and very, I feel myself that, very much, satisfying reading those. But of course, each book has its own strength. It's not that it's covering everything. So I love Cooper, I love Hart, I love Ridley, Saunders et al., so Wallace and Ray, and different book given me different understanding of the phenomenon. And happens to be that we have also a book that is about crafting literature review, how our book is different than other existing books, that we followed practical approach, like we are responding to the students' questions, practical side. Well, any book you can try to get it from your library, you can buy from Amazon and things like that. Some of today's discussion you will also find it out in the YouTube, another channel, a research piece, and maybe a little bit different, a little bit of also similarities there. Okay, so never mind, I will say that this is a journey that all of us we have gone through, and you started who are new. So I hope that my today's discussion given you some understanding. For those who are just started their journey, maybe not much to those who already know about it, already written papers, but for those basically who started their journey. Okay, and I will say that never give up. And of course it is overwhelming. Of course it is something everybody feel one point of time, that cracking the head, pulling the hair, but this is the way we do. But once you start reading properly, you go inside it, and then you start to see beauty of it. And it's very important that you love what you are doing. If you love what you are doing, definitely you will do it. Okay, so try to love your research, try to love your topic, and try to work hard. Okay, with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Farzana. It was a wonderful presentation and well explained. I was enjoying your presentation, the way you carried out everything. Your slides were so powerful that I could see each and everything you have covered. So most of the questions, which are 70 to 80%, have already been addressed by you, because there are a lot of misconception regarding the literature review, that whether it is history or what to include in that. And above everything, you have mentioned the research gap link as well, which is very useful for the viewers who are watching it, and they will take advantage of that thing as well. So I was really enjoying, and I could remember my time during the University of Malaya, since I'm the graduate of University of Malaya. So at that time, when we used to attend any workshop regarding the literature review, the same thing was related, that each and everything they used to cover, and the same approach by you, that you covered each from A to Z. You covered every misconception for the beginner, particularly, that they have a lot of doubts in their mind when they start literature reviewing. And I used to say in my classroom, particularly to the PhD students, that everything starts with the literature review. And I love the thing you mentioned in your slides, that if you read the poor content, again, if you don't read it properly or critically, you will not write it critically. That is what I love, that you use it, because reading habit is very much important for literature review. Most of the time, people do it, that they skip the reading process. So you cannot skip this process. It's very important process. And I like your that slide of this academic writing style. And I love the phrase which you use, that most of the students, they miss the formatting, and which is most important thing, I believe, that it's, as you mentioned in your talk, that it's most important, and it shows your commitment, and how you are committed, and how properly you are presenting. It is just like the food that is being presented in the restaurants. When we go there and the food is not good presented on the table, so we don't want to eat it. So the same thing, when they present the proposal or the thesis which is not formatted properly, we believe that what kind of person that is. So I'm sure that the slides are very much powerful, very much interesting, and I love the content, which was so powerful. And I like your tips and tricks for the upcoming students, because as a PhD doctor, I know that these were the real problem which we faced. I faced personally, and the way you covered everything was wonderful. But since again we have so many questions, but I have taken a few questions to ask you, because the students, they want to ask different questions, which is also important to address them. One thing, there is a one student, that Sarah Chaudhary, she wants to know about your book, that how could I get your literature review book. So can you tell us or guide us, how can we have your book, please?
Thank you very much, Dr. Hadasha, for the question. Actually, this is something tricky question to answer, because this is not available in the Amazon. This is
Yeah.
actually I mean, this who want to buy it, they have to contact to me. My email address you have, you can give them. But the problem is, at the moment, due to the MCU and things like that, lockdown things, after coronavirus, basically we cannot send it to the outside Malaysia. So
Mhm.
at the moment, it is available within Malaysia only. So if anyone have any contact in Malaysia, yeah, of course we can, send it to that person. And also another thing is the monetary issues, because sometimes it happens that transaction has problem for certain countries.
True,
So
true,
this
true.
is a little bit difficult at the moment. So if you have
Yeah.
any contact in Malaysia, that of course can be transcend. But otherwise,
Mhm.
at the moment, it's difficult.
Mhm. Yeah, or she can ask her Pakistani fellows in UTM or elsewhere in Malaysia, particularly in Kuala Lumpur. They can contact you, and they can get the copy from you. That would be a good suggestion for her, and I believe that it would be. And as Dr. Shahab, he told me once that once he goes to the KL, he used to see you and get copies from you. So definitely
He's so
my
kind of
copy is there.
so kind of him.
Yeah. So I will definitely book my slot of that book because it's very wonderful, and I will recommend to my students that please read it because it's so powerful and well written as well. Because I can see that this is the snapshot which you have discussed in this presentation. How powerful would be the book, because in which you would have mentioned a lot of things with a lot of time and pages as well. So we will be definitely taking it. There is one another small question or your opinion on that. There is a MPhil student. He wants to ask that a literature review is the foundation of research. So, do you think that a poor content in article can mislead and detract a researcher? So, please, I know you have explained it, but please give your opinion on that as well. As you mentioned that Google Scholar sometimes that mislead us. So, what do you suggest for that student, please?
Well, actually, it's a good question to me because for me, no question is silly question. Because when we
Sure.
started doing research, so then what happened? A small thing even become very big issue.
Big issue.
We need a
Yeah.
little bit of just push. So
Mm.
the question is important. I think what actually I can say, yeah, as you said, I explained, but again, no problem to explain again. The issue is that poor content is really misleading. Sometimes what
Mm.
happen, I'm giving example. I used to review for conference papers before. I stopped doing it because I found that some conferences, they are just money maker. They are not telling the true information. What they're doing, they are just, it is a, I'm sorry, I'm not saying all, but some, I mentioned some. So what happening, I saw some proceedings. They published papers that has wrong p-value. The p-value is supposed to be rejected, they accepted. So
True.
since then, and if you read this kind of paper, definitely what you're reporting in your writing, that is completely wrong. So
Yes.
therefore, it is very important to choose your, source of information. So please make
True.
sure you see the credential of that particular source. That's very important. There is no way that anything published in impact factor journals and that is telling you wrong p-value. No way. So
Mm.
therefore, first thing, the choice of your information, the source of information is very important. See the credential, and of course, you also have to see the the journal. If you're reading about journal, then whether this journal is indexed in proper citation bodies, whether it is in top tier journals and things like that. This kind of misleading thing happens when we do not see the credential of the source. So
Yeah.
it can help you actually a lot if you look for the credential of the your source. Then I hope, I do believe the information given there will not be misleading. But
Yeah.
mislead can be for different reason as well. But sometimes it happens that we have so many information that can mislead us. That we have so many school of thoughts that can make us overwhelmed, not misleading, overwhelmed.
True.
So when you have many information, then you have to see actually what is relevant to your topic, what is relevant to your study. If you have many school of thought, you need to know all school of thought, and then finally you need to figure it out which one suits best for your study. Okay, so it's
True.
just that, like, misleading related to lack of credentiality, but overwhelming, this thing can come any point of your time, any point, and it's very common to be
Mm.
overwhelmed. But again, of course, you can figure it out what is relevant, what is not, what is more justifiable or not. So this can be, of course, done, but you need reading and practice, definitely.
Yeah. Very great insight, Dr. Farzana. Thank you very much for such a wonderful answer. And I hope now that the student will get the help of that answer. And he would look for the credential which you have mentioned in your slide, that credential source is more important, as you mentioned as well, good journals, etc. Okay, the second question by the Zahiruddin again is the that in the hierarchy of steps in research, we start from a basic idea or concept which are concerned, which is required to be reached. It is either the first step is the cognitive activity, or it also relies on literature review. That person just want to ask that should that problem comes from my mind, or should I investigate in the literature review?
when we are focusing on a particular issue, I answer a little bit differently. Okay, so when you
Yes.
focus on particular issue to be investigated, that particular issue actually can be something coming from very much latest phenomenon. So it can be also by reading it, by observing it, by facing
Mm.
it, experiencing in your own way. For example, sometimes we have doctorate students who are doing DBA. So sometimes they highlight or they ponder certain issues that they experience in their workplace. For example, I give one example. Let's say anyone facing problem in gender bias. Let's say it's a female boss, but she is not getting cooperation from the male subordinates, for example. Then they can, maybe they want to study, then maybe gender bias or minority issues, for example. Okay, or power distance issues, Hofstede given and all those things. Then
Yeah.
maybe another person, that person has the problem of that. Okay, I am minority, and or maybe work culture. Okay, so they are minority and they are not getting proper support, for example. So they also can see they here actually diversified work culture or cultural barriers. So one thing can come from your own experience, of course, and then you can try to relate it with academic concept, academic terminologies. That's why you are doing research. If you are doing consultancy project, you need not to think too much about academic side. You just need to solve the problem. But when you're doing academic study, academic research, then you have to tie it with academic concept, academic rules and principles. So you can figure it out your problem, and then you can look for academic concept, and you can just see the make the bridge. You also can see what is going around, like as I said, COVID. Now everything related to COVID, you will see every single new research articles, whether it is IT, whether it is tourism, whether it is restaurant, everything tying with the COVID, because it's very burning issue affecting all side of the life, all aspect of the businesses, organizations. So this is can be also by observing. So you can just take it from newspaper cutting. You can get information from even from your television, when you're looking at the news mediums. Again, it can be by reading literature, of course. By reading, when you read something, then something trigger in your mind that okay, something sometimes click in your mind, that okay, this is something, yeah, I'm interested. For example, I am working on green consumption. I'm working on green marketing, sustainability marketing at the moment. So when I was reading green marketing things, sustainable marketing thing, what came to my mind that you are talking about sustainable consumption, but in the literature we never know how to measure it. So I came up with the scale. I have two scale available, one from behavioral side, one from attitudinal side. So this two scale came from reading articles, by finding out the deficiency in the literature. They were talking about sustainable consumption, but we don't have the skill to measure it. So now we have, Alhamdulillah, I already published this too. So these are the things when you want to figure it out, any idea, any problem, not necessarily it will be only one way. It can be varieties of way. But now when you want to put it in academic writing, you must definitely, you have to read articles, definitely you have to put it in together, tied it together with academic writing style, and you have to see literature. Why? Because once, let's say you got the idea from newspaper, for example, but then you need to read literature first, because you need to know who and who worked on this particular topic before. So if you do not read, you never know who have done it. You need to know what they have found on this phenomenon. If you do not read, you never know what other people have found it. You need to know what are the school of thoughts, whether there is any ongoing debate. If you do not read, you never know ongoing debate, you never know the school of thoughts. You need to know many things, what methodology is being used, for example. So those, all those things you can do it only once you read. And what does it mean read? When you review literature. So review literature is part and parcel of your doing study. Whether you get the idea after reading or before reading, doesn't matter. Once you have the idea, you have to go through the literature review process. And it is cognitive process, definitely, because you are using your cognition. When we read, we use our cognition. Without cognition, you cannot actually be a good literature reviewer.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it.
Yeah. Thank you very much. What a nicely answered you this question, Dr. Farzana. We do believe that its time is exceeding, and we have
Yes.
taken a lot of your time. Just one last question, because a lot of students have questioned that this one question in one way or the other. They want to ask that if somebody is conducting the quantitative kind of study, can they relate the qualitative study, and they can report the qualitative studies to support their argument in quantitative study as well?
Well, I hope this is the last question I'm answering
Yes,
because,
yes,
due to the time
yeah.
constraint, but the question is very interesting. Well, when you talk literature, literature is not only confined within the, within quantitative paradigm, qualitative paradigm, or mixed methodology. Literature meaning anything published. So anything published related to your topic that you're working on. So let's say, for example, I'm working on, for example, take the same example again, sustainable consumption. So now I will not look only for quantitative, I will look for qualitative, I will look for even conceptual paper, because literature has many purpose to fulfill. So if you are, for example, if you are testing hypothesis kind of thing, even though when you are defining the variable, when you are bringing the debate from other scholars, when you're talking about different school of thought, those things actually beyond of your quantitative, qualitative, mixed method paradigms. Those are beyond of that. We just need to know how other people define it. We need to understand how other people look at this, how, what are the debates going on, what are the school of thoughts going on. So when you need to know all those things actually, it's limitless. It is not confined with empirical study or not empirical study, conceptual study. It's not like that. Even review papers can be very good source for your literature review, though they are not empirical paper per se. So it is not within the boundary of, any kind of particular paradigm. It can be anything. Even let's say you are uh, proposing a hypothesis and you want to justify the hypothesis, so you're using quantitative approach. So you still can take any idea from any qualitative paper. They explain that relationship. Maybe they use proposition that can be source of your justification even. So it's not about only you are doing quantitative, so you will just justify based on quantitative study. It's not. And so when we read, we have to be more, open-minded. We have to be broaden up our scope. So I know that certain times students they say how I can narrow down my scope. For me, it is a funnel. Start with big, then you focus, then you can narrow down. But do not start with very much, focused place. For me, I all the time suggest my students, you should have a, let's say my students, they're also working on green marketing, because I am taking students who are working on that topic only. So they, what do they do? I say them, doesn't mean you will read only green marketing. You should read about marketing, some traditional, conventional approach as well. So then you move to green. I mean, I want them to have broader perspective as well, because to me, otherwise we are just one-eyed. We don't have the bigger understanding. So yeah, of course, you start from big, then you narrow down, because of course, finally you have to move on to what you are doing. So that's my suggestion, that just read properly, whatever relevant, what is latest, what is you think that adding value to the knowledge, and then you will figure it out how to justify and explain. Yeah.
Very nicely said. Perfect answer for that, Dr. Farzana. I must appreciate your great knowledge, excellent knowledge, the great insight, and the command you have on the field. What a wonderful session it was with you. Very wonderful opportunity, the learning opportunity you provided us. We are highly thankful to you for your time, for your precious time and valuable suggestion. It was so amazing session with you that Dr. Farzana, we would request for another session with you in coming future on other topic as well, which we will discuss later on. And once again, I would like to thank you on behalf of Kalwas and behalf of the whole viewers who are watching you. And it was a wonderful session, because I could see the comment of the viewers that it was a wonderful and great session. So thank you once again, and we will be having you again, inshallah, in future on a different topic, on different forum as well, because we have certain panel discussions as well. So we will take you on that as well. So thank you once again, the Dr. Farzana, for your
I
time.
also
For
want to thank all of you, and I also really, really, I enjoyed the whole sessions with you and the participant, and thanks for the wonderful questions. But due to the
yeah.
time limitations, I cannot take more. I'm so sorry.
So nice of you. So nice of you. And viewers, that's all for this session. Please stay tuned to this channel so that we could provide you other opportunities to Dr. Farzana and to rest of the speakers as well. Keep learning, come and learn and share your knowledge. That's our mission and that's our goal as well. So that's all for this session. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye. Assalamualaikum.